Hello and good afternoon. My name is Juergen Steinmetz, joining you from eTurboNews and livestream.travel in Honolulu, Hawaii. And with me, as always, is Dr. Peter Tarlow, our co-host, and he's joining us from College Station, Texas.
Right.
So we always start with the weather. I haven't been really outside yet, but looking outside, it looks like it's a beautiful day. It's a little bit on the warm side here for Hawaii. I think it's 80, 84, what is warm. And but beautiful sky, and when I look out of my window here, I see a lot of people on sailing boats, and beaches are full. So it looks like it's a beautiful day here. But how are things in College
Yeah,
Station?
I think it's impossible for anybody else to compete with Hawaii when it comes to weather, because you're talking about it's a little bit warm. And if it were 84 degrees in Texas, we would call it a cold front. And people would be putting on coats, because today actually was one of the cooler days. It went down to 92, 93 with intermittent rain, which kind of cooled things off. But normally at this time of year here, it's a nice, cool 98, 99, 100, 101, 105. So I think that much of the world has got to be really jealous of Hawaii. You have great winters and cool summers, from at least a Texas perspective. So I think that's really a big selling point. And when you talk about Hawaiian weather, you guys really are living in paradise.
Well, many people tell us this, but if you live in paradise too long, like I do, paradise becomes the norm. So I guess
yes, I understand. I understand. The one thing I can say that's good about Texas is because with our hot weather, we have high humidity. And so it's like living in a bottle of oil of Olay that's boiling. And it gives everybody beautiful skin because it's so damp that you don't get wrinkles. So, you know, I tell people all the time, I'm 95 years old and I look great. I'm not really 95, but I lie. But really, people here have very few wrinkles because it is so damp. So that's really a good thing. And that kind of leads to the whole issue of tourism and weather and how impactful weather is on tourism. We see this, you know, how much of the world of tourism is dependent on cold in certain places, hot in other places. The Caribbean would fall apart if it didn't have cold weather in New York or in the Eastern or Canada, because why do people go to the Caribbean? They go to escape the cold weather. And so the Caribbean offers that type of refuge. So I think really weather is a big issue when it comes to tourism.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, most people travel for the nice weather. If you live in a country or in a region with bad weather, I can tell you Germany, for example, the weather is bad a lot of times, and people are looking for the sunshine in Spain, and here it's the same. I mean, we call them snowbirds, I think, in the United States. Those
Yes,
people,
we do. But snowbirds are very different. Those are people who spend, older people like me, who spend 2 or 3 or 4 months, the winter months, and they buy a second home. And that second home becomes a place where they can escape during the cold winter months. And they especially go to Florida or to Arizona. Some there to Texas is also developing a tourism industry. And I think in other parts of the world, there are also people are able to escape. Of course, in the United States, it's easier because you're not going to a different country or different language. You're in the same country. And because the US is so big, you're able to accomplish that.
Well, I think the world, talking about traveling and nice weather, the world is trying to get back to normal, specifically here in the United States with vaccine numbers on the rise. Specifically, yes. We heard a lot about the cruise industry. The cruise industry is now conducting test cruises. I don't know exactly what they wanted to do test, but maybe, I guess they want to test that people can be on a cruise ship without COVID being a threat. And from what I understand, 2 days ago, the judge struck down the CDC conditional sailing order against cruise lines. So we may actually be back in the cruise business very soon, but I think it's good news. People love to go on a cruise, and if you can do it safely, it's a different way of exploring the world.
Yeah, there really are 2 parts to cruising. One part is, of course, being on the ship, and the other part is having people get off the ship and making uh, calls of port calls in various parts of the world. And the issue is when somebody gets off the ship, how do you protect them, especially if they wander around the city and then come back to the cruise line and maybe reinfect people on the cruise line. So maybe one of the things they'll have to do is have instant tests, such as like you had in Europe, where before you can get back on the cruise ship, you have to show that you had an instant negative test.
Yeah, and I think this is going to be like this for a while. Traveling will be associated with vaccine and with negative tests. I think this is going to be the new norm when you talk about the new norm. And, and we will actually hear a lot more at the end of the month. There's the Asian Leadership Conference in Korea. It's not really in Korea, it's on your computer, on your virtual computer. And if you wanted to be part of it, it's usually $1,000 to actually attend this event. It has high caliber celebrities, I think, in the travel and tourism industry talking, and they must be making a lot of money. I don't know, but if you wanted to get some free tickets, you can go actually to worldtourismevents.com, sign up for it, and we'd be happy to give you free access to watch this event and learn what's going on in or what is supposed to go on in the tourism industry in the future.
Another event that will be taking place very soon, in fact, they're doing trials for now, are the Olympics in Tokyo. And the Japanese today announced that there will be a maximum of 10,000 spectators at any particular event, but that the event site cannot have more than 50% of whatever its capacity is. So if you're having a event venue that has capacity for 4,000 people, the maximum that could go would be 2,000. There's a top of 10,000, no matter what the site is. The other thing is that you must be a resident of Japan. You cannot go to the Olympics if you are from any other country other than Japan, and you must be living full-time in Japan. So it's going to be really interesting to see how these Olympics go. On some level, the people in Japan would like to really cancel them. On the other hand, there really is the major issue of the athletes who've been training for a long time, and all of a sudden they lose everything. And of course, today in the United States, there was another big sporting event issue, which is the Supreme Court voted 9-0 as the first stage of, they're not yet paying student athletes, they're actually saying that student athletes can receive extra equipment, computers, et cetera, but it does look like eventually all student athletes will be able to compete and actually get paid. And that's going to change a lot of the way that the tourism, especially the athletic tourism, is done in the United States. In my hometown, we have a stadium for over 100,000 people. And for every football game, it's full 100%. Well, bringing even say half that stadium is visitors, bringing an extra 50,000 people to a small community is a huge economic impact. And now how the universities will handle this question, are student athletes basically slaves, or do they have the right to start demanding contracts and getting paid when the universities are making millions and millions of dollars? So this is going to be a big issue. I think it may impact eventually other parts of the world with the whole issue of, is there amateur athletics or not? The other big issue that took place in the world of sports today was that someone from New Zealand became the first trans person to qualify the Olympics. And this was a man who did not qualify, who, from what I understand, a number of years ago, and then transitioned into becoming a woman and is now qualified on the women's team. And of course, this is a huge controversy because is it fair? On one level, you're discriminating, not letting a trans person do it. On the other side, women are saying, wait a second, physically, there's no way a woman physiologically can compete with a man, even if he's now become a woman. So it's going to be a big issue in tourism around the world.
Well, unless we're going to have 3 different categories between male, female, and trans. I don't know. It's a crazy world. And yeah, this is definitely an interesting development, probably a big victory for equality and the LGBT movement in the day of Pride. But is it fair? I don't know. And specifically to have the statement at the Olympics, I think is quite amazing because there's so many participants from countries where LGBT lifestyles are actually illegal. And
Yes.
so yeah, I think New Zealand is setting um, grounds here for something newer, at least.
Yeah. Yeah, I was. It's not just New Zealand. It's the fact that the International Olympic Committee accepted the person. So again, um, I think it's going to be a big debate, and one of the debates is going to take place, which is not so much on tourism as it is in philosophy, is you have women's groups saying this is totally unfair and there's no equality because of this, and on the other hand, you have the trans community saying it's totally unfair to ban us from being in women's sports. So we'll have to see how this goes. I don't think there are a lot of men. I don't think a lot of women who are going to compete on become trans into men. I think it'll probably be more men transitioning into women, and that will become the issue. But the whole issue of sports and tourism is a huge issue. Getting ready for soccer games in Qatar, the issues of uh, some of the other places around the world. And I'm working on the Olympics for 2028 in Los Angeles. And these are already becoming big issues that we're talking about. So, and the Olympics, of course, is a major tourism event, no matter how you look at it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And in other news, interesting story, what I didn't know is Queen Elizabeth II it, is gave out 1,206, no, 1,100, honored 1,190 Australians for their role they played in 2020 and 2021, and among them is a gentleman. He is a GM for the Sophie Hotel in Melbourne. What I found interesting in the Queen is still the head of state, not only for the United Kingdom, but also for 13 other Commonwealth countries, what includes
Including Canada,
including Australia, New Zealand, major countries. So this was big news for the Accor Hotel Group yesterday, a French hotel group, that one of their own and their GM was named by the Queen for at the Queen's birthday honor on the Queen's birthday honor list as a member of the Order of Australia. So I thought that was an interesting story, and we had a lot of readers that loved
it. Yeah, and you know the Queen has two birthdays because she was really born in the winter, but the weather isn't very nice. So when you're Queen, you get to move your birthday to a nicer weather. So this is her official birthday, not her physiological birthday.
Well, that's good. So we don't know what sign the Queen is. The two
Well,
choices.
she's signed by choice or signed by birth. That's a whole nother issue that takes place. And of course, some of the countries like Canada really like being part of the Commonwealth, and other countries like Australia have a very, very large group of people who would like to pull out and not become and sever relations with the United Kingdom. So that's a political debate that takes place in each country.
No, and well, what else is going on in the news? We're working on a developing story that involves a citizenship for sale. Interesting subject. We talked about it a little bit before we got on the air in this broadcast about citizenships actually offered in many countries in the Caribbean, all over the place, in the European Union, in Portugal, and in Malta. And
those are usually called golden passports.
Golden passports, yes, and it's interesting stories. And so I guess money buys you a lot these days.
Yes. If you remember when we were speaking a few months ago to a friend of ours in St. Kitts, he pointed out that a St. Kitts passport needs no visas any place in the world. And therefore people are buying passports from St. Kitts. And that's a whole interesting story. One of the other things in the US, and we won't go into details, but as you probably know, we're having a major crime wave across the country, and that's impacting tourism now. The president's going to be speaking about that on Wednesday night. And this is something that's very serious because if you don't have safety and you don't have security, in the end, you won't have tourism. And the tourism industry has learned that with the issue of biosafety. Um, and we're seeing that in places such as not only around the world with COVID, but of course, right now, places like Brazil are especially struggling. Brazil went over 500,000 people. I think 2 days ago, they hit the 500,000 dead. 500,000 people have died of COVID in Brazil. And that's a very large number, even though it's a very large country. But the bottom line is, without safety and security, tourism will cease to exist. And we saw that in 2020 because of biosecurity. And God willing, we'll be able to get a handle on the lack of safety and security in the United States. Because if not, when tourism does open up, that will be a big drop in the number of people. And and one of the things, of course, that's now is the whole issue, and this is also in Europe, of defunding the police. And can you have safety if you don't have good police? And you even have one candidate in New York saying the police should no longer have firearms. So that will be a really interesting thing to figure out, because good policing, and I always emphasize good policing, what we call TOPS, tourism-oriented policing and protection services, is really one of the essential pillars of good tourism. And so we're going to have some interesting phenomena and things to talk about one way or the other. We don't know how it's going to play out yet, but it's going to impact the world of tourism. And God willing, we don't have a second plague, the plague of crime and terrorism and insecurity, because that would be a terrible plague for the tourism people.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Tourism and security is very much involved, and tourists don't want to enjoy a vacation. They don't want to look out for people that might, that mug them, unless you're going someplace.
And mugging is actually, in so many parts of the world, it's not just mugging, it's also murder. And many places just cannot get their act together. And so I worked in Rio de Janeiro, and you're really afraid to walk on the streets of Copacabana or Ipanema, even in broad daylight, because of the fact that somebody could murder you or rape you. And that's a really scary situation. And so the hotels have suffered tremendously because of that lack of security.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, Peter, I think we're coming to the end
Yes.
of.
I think you need to go eat breakfast and lunch and dinner.
Yes, busy day today.
Yes, I'm going to send you, I think I'm going to send you a care package from Texas so that you can.
All right, we need that here.
All right, have a good afternoon. Enjoy the beautiful weather in Hawaii. Aloha. Bye-bye.
Aloha, Peter. Take care.